What's up everybody? I'm Josh and welcome to Daily Curiosity. So basically this series is going to be me just trying to figure out some of the questions and problems that I have on a day-to-day basis, and where I can seek out an expert and try and sort of get their advice and put it together, and then from there sort of come up with a strategy. So something I've been thinking about for a while is I've always had good nutrition, but to really get like right on top of it and then also take some of the guesswork out. So I'm actually on my way now to see a friend of mine who I went to uni with, Lindsay. She's a nutritionist and she's done a bunch of studies in different areas, and at the moment she's just started offering some genetics panel testing. So that's where I'm going to go today to get my, I think it's about 60 different genes tested. I'll let her explain, and yeah, hopefully get those results back in a couple of weeks and see how it goes. Well, hey guys, this is Lindsay. So, well, Lindsay, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Lindsay Kosh. I'm a nutritionist, a friend of Josh and Kat's, and have recently just done a bit of certification to do some genetic testing. So I think Josh was pretty interested in checking out what was going on underneath the surface. So we're just about to go through the swabbing. It's a very simple, easy process that we just have to get a swab in his mouth, and we're going to be able to send it away to the lab. So the first part of it is obviously just having him sign a patient-informed consent. It obviously just means that your DNA isn't going to be sent off to some government in Slovakia or somewhere else.
I was about to say, no one better be cloning me.
No one's going to clone Josh, don't worry, Kat. It's okay. Fine fibers on there, which is what actually collects the cell in the mouth cavity that's in between the lower jaw and the cheek. So that's what we're going to use to collect some of the cells. They will have already analyzed his data and his DNA for over 60 different gene variants, looking for what they call SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms, which are like genetic mutations. These genetic mutations affect how our biochemical processes work. We code for proteins and for enzymes, so it has a lot to do with not only nutrient absorption and metabolism, but basically a lot of the functioning of the body that goes underneath the surface. So we'll be able to see what Josh has as far as the SNPs, and then the great thing is that once we know this information, we can basically tell him everything that he needs to do to potentially avoid an issue when it comes to his health. So it's really the ultimate in preventative healthcare. Awesome. So that's as simple as it is.
I said that we went to uni together, but Lindsay's a lot smarter than I am.
No, it's not true. It's not true. Don't ask me about medications. I was like, okay.
Don't ask me either.
Okay. So it's very simple. We're doing the whole well-being bundle for him, which is the whole panel. You can do individual panels on certain things, but he's going to get the whole shebang. So once we get the results back, we'll go into more detail and we can go step by step into it.
Awesome. Cool.
Done.
Thanks, Linz.
I have your DNA now.
Cheers. I know. I feel so vulnerable. Alright guys, we'll just take a quick break there. So at this point, Lindsay contacted me and then gave me a list of blood tests that she wanted me to get before I went back to see her for the final sort of review. So I just went and saw my GP, had about 7 vials of blood taken, but essentially looking at physiologically what was happening in my body at the moment, and then to use those results in combination with my genetics testing as well, just to have a look what was going on inside my body. So yeah, let's go back to Lindsay. Alright everyone, welcome back. So we're seeing Lindsay now for the results, and I have been since to see the doctor and had about 7 vials of blood taken, so it was yeah, it was a lot.
It is a lot.
The doctor said you'll thank your friend afterwards. So got the results from my genetics test, and then Lindsay's going to incorporate the bloods as well, so to see where the links are happening sort of in my body.
Absolutely. So Josh gets like what the official report is through Bioceuticals. They give him roughly about 8 to 10 pages, but as far as the information, it'll just tell you whether he has a SNP, if he doesn't, and whether it's homozygous, meaning he has 2 copies, one from mom and one from dad, or what we call heterozygous, which means he has 1 copy from 1 parent. So obviously when you have homozygous and 2 copies, the effect it can have on your biochemistry is a little bit stronger. And if it's just heterozygous, it's something that you just need to be aware of, but it may not have quite a strong effect on your actual biochemistry. So I'll just explain very quickly how we read it in essence is going to go through about 60 different gene variants. The key means full circle is homozygous, half a circle means heterozygous. And I'm basically going to take all of this data. You get this report, which is just like your copy.
Yep.
I get about 48 pages.
Whoa.
Which I take the 48 pages and I turn it into about another 10, which is the main report that I'm going to talk on today. But you
Cool.
keep this for your record as if it's going to be blood tests.
Yes.
You can keep that on the side. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just orient it so that you can understand what the gene is, what it does, and some of the effects it has on your biochemistry, but also the main important thing is what can you do about it. So we'll just go highlight quickly a little bit about vitamin B12 because Josh has 2 gene SNPs. Now SNP again is a single nucleotide polymorphism, which means there's a little mutation in the coding for that gene. So he has one called FUT2. Now he does have a homozygous effect on his gene in that way. So it just means that he has an issue with the synthesis of something called oligosaccharides. These oligosaccharides then feed certain probiotic bacteria, and it's actually probiotic bacteria that we use to facilitate the absorption of B12. So because this it's kind of a downstream effect, it's not as straightforward as you would think of, oh, I just have a hard time transferring my B12 into tissues.
Yeah.
It's more that your microbial diversity might be slightly different, and those microbes that we need to absorb the B12 is not going to be the same as someone that doesn't have this gene.
Yeah.
So you are one of those people that has that sort of downstream effect with B12.
Yeah.
Which just means that the form of B12 that you take is important, and also the dosage.
Lindsay's already told me off for my B vitamins for the wrong kind.
I said, what kind of supplements are you taking? And I said, take some pictures. And I was like,
She wasn't impressed.
Not that brand. I was like, you're wasting your money.
So that means I've got a double mutation on that one?
You do, yeah. So
okay.
I'm using the same key as what their report is when you see a full circle, that means you've got a copy from mum and dad. You can say, thanks, mum and dad.
Yep.
Give me the shit gene? No. No. You can completely get around it, but it's actually just really good to know that information. So that's in one aspect. That's the FUT2.
Yep.
You also have another gene that they call the TCN2, and that's actually a vitamin B12 transport protein. So it means that also the B12 that you're ingesting via food or supplementation, is it being transported into the body well?
Okay.
And you have a little bit of an issue with that, which means
B12 struggling.
no, it just means that you really have to eat well. You have to have good sources of B12. Like I said, supplementation with B12 is often advantageous for people, just to make sure, especially if you're training and you've got higher demands, and if you have a stressful job, because when we are under stress,
I saw that, managed stress,
if you experience stress, we literally chew through B vitamins, magnesium, and zinc, all these things at a much higher rate. So it's kind of one of those things that you've got to account for all of these different factors in life to see how
organ meats, that's something I've actually been thinking about a fair bit lately. I've seen a lot on nose to tail sort of eating and stuff like that. So
well, it's funny because you know what it is, it all is going back to biology in essence. Like you think of an animal, when they, a carnivore that does eat meat, we are omnivores, we do eat obviously meat by choice for some people. What is the first thing that like the alpha wolf will go for?
Like the heart? I don't know.
Like the liver.
Organ meats.
Organ meats. Because that they know the nutrition in those are a much higher rate. So it's kind of like the top dog gets the organ meats, and the lowly ones get all the scraps.
We just eat the flesh.
We just eat the meat.
Yeah,
we actually we're getting amino acids and things out of there. But like I said, some of those real trace minerals and things in there. And again, with organ meats, it's clean. That's the only thing, because you can imagine. Liver is the main organ for our detoxification, and the same thing with an animal. So if you're gonna get organ meats, you need to make sure it's from a grass-fed.
Yeah, and that's my meat as it is, like the organic grass-fed. That's pretty much the way I roll.
Organ meats
from a grain-fed.
Then you're just adding to your own liver, having to detoxify a lot of that stuff. So that's an example of some of the B12. Now the big thing is we then test for pathology, which is why I sent Josh away for the 7 vials of blood, is just because you have that gene doesn't necessarily mean that there is going to be a biochemical issue. It does depend on how you live, what you eat, what you're doing. Josh's blood serums didn't come back too bad as well. He is taking a supplement. So he's probably accounting for some of the differences that might be a potential problem in his genes. So we give him a list of all the different blood serums that might be an accurate measure to really, really see what's going on.
Which one does homocysteine correspond to? To both genes?
It's both, but the homocysteine is a whole part of this vitamin B12 transport chain, which is why I brought this one here. It's really quite interesting. So you've got your vitamin B transport, you got your folate, and then you got what they call a transsulfuration pathway. These are all very intricately linked, and it's kind of like this big cog. So you have an issue or nutrients that are pulled out, and the whole thing starts to fall apart because it's very cyclical. So we take some of this B12 into this whole transsulfuration pathway. Methionine is an amino acid that we need. It often, as a byproduct, gets transferred into homocysteine, but it's only supposed to be an intermediate.
Okay.
We need to then have genes to transfer the homocysteine back into methionine, which requires B12.
And then B6 there
and B6, zinc, B12, all these things. You have an issue also here. So you have SNPs and MTR and MTRR. So that means that this isn't an issue, going from methionine to homocysteine, but there is a bit of an issue of transferring it back, which means that you have free-floating homocysteine, which is another amino acid in your system. If you couple that with a B12 deficiency, this gets worse.
Yeah, so and that's the one that is predisposes you to vascular, the actual integrity of the internal of the vessels.
So it just means that like your blood vessels become quite rigid and there can be sort of damage accumulated to that area. So you can see how it's everything in the body, everything in the human body is so intricately linked. And nutrition, if you are missing food groups, if you're pulling nutrition out, and if you're not eating well, the body's amazing, but it's just not running efficiently. This is like well-oiled machine.
I started freaking out because homocysteine is also a cardiovascular risk factor. So my blood test came back at 2 times risk, which is the lower end of the risk, but it still is a risk. And I'm like, that's not good. Coupled with elevated cholesterol, I was like, okay.
I know.
I'm glad we did this.
Like at a young person, you can see why if people just kind of let this go for another 20 years, all this stuff has been going on in the body for a long period of time. It's like that's the empowering thing about getting this information.
You can make changes and adapt, Because I started putting into like the Baker Institute full cardiovascular risk calculator. I came down super low, like the 1%. But I was like freaking out when I started looking at this stuff. So it's good though. I'd rather catch things at the beginning, like when it's
Look, if it's any consolation, I've got a few issues with homocysteine too. So at certain times of stress, mine have been
It's not good.
No, and it's a marker I always test for. And to be honest, when I have my clients, it's a blood serum marker that I often test for people.
Yeah.
I think.
So with management of stress as well, that would drive down that.
Because
that's
again,
really
you take away stress, then your own endogenous demand for B12 to handle those stress and the cortisol and the adrenaline, then that B12 then can just be gone to do all of these other biochemical processes. So when you manage stress, then your reliance on B12 is less, which when you have more B12, then it can make up for some of these other genetic SNPs that are in this whole transsulfuration pathway.
So cool.
It's crazy. I know. The chemistry of the body.
It's a lot to understand.
I know.
It's good. I'm gonna have to study this afterwards.
It's okay. You've got it filmed. You can just rewind.
I'll stick this up in the image as well. This picture here.
Or just take a screenshot. And this is like where you can see all of the blue is key nutrients. So you need folic acid and folate. Obviously, it's transferred into what they call 5-methyl-THF. You need B12, you need zinc, you need B6, B2, you need choline.
So that B6, that's for me to produce my own glutathione?
Yes.
So that's B6 where there's a bit of breakdown as well. That's not happening as much as it probably should be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've only just gotten into like one area, which is B12.
Alright, we'll go to the next one. I have a feeling there's more to go. Alright guys, so I might just wrap it up there. Basically, Lindsay and I had a chat that went sort of well over an hour and went through the whole report. But I guess the biggest takeaway things for me, like I know there was a lot of science there, but the good thing is that essentially, you get a take-home sheet which gives you the foods that you should be eating, some guidance around some of the supplementation that may assist you, and then also some of the lifestyle factors. So I might just pop that up here. Essentially for me, the big things were vitamin B and vitamin D deficiencies, and even though I spent a lot of time in the sun, just the way my body metabolizes those 2 vitamins. So essentially with vitamin B, for myself it needs to be methylated, so the vitamin B supplements I was taking weren't really doing anything. And the same thing with the vitamin D. So it needs to be methylated and also liposomal, I think it is. So basically like a little solution that you put in your mouth. But essentially the big things that will help my body do is, for one, it will help with, for me, it might give me a bit more energy, which would be fantastic. But also with this homocysteine and methionine pathway that I put up earlier. So that will also then lead into the way that my liver detoxifies as well. So at the moment, that process sort of isn't going through as far as it should be. And what Lynn sort of described to me is that stress definitely will help eat up that vitamin B and sort of strip it away and not allow it to do its natural processes within the body. And then also going through the bottom of sort of this pathway here is to produce glutathione, which is a powerful antioxidant, which my body really isn't probably producing a lot of at the moment. So essentially the big things were, yeah, the vitamin B, the vitamin D supplementation, a lot of the foods that I was already eating, but also adding in some organ meats, and then also just looking how I manage stress, which is probably something we can all do a bit better. But I guess the biggest thing was, for me, is having a look at how my body actually works. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, taking that guesswork out. So for me specifically, what do I need to be supplementing? You know, what sort of diet should I be eating? One of the biggest things I learned was that my body doesn't metabolize fatty acids very well. So if you think about a really high saturated fat diet, or even like a carnivore diet, would probably not suit me very well. And then with my vitamin B deficiencies, like a vegetarian or a vegan diet wouldn't really suit me very well either. So me being able to take the guesswork out and sort of, I guess, look at a particular way that I can design my own diet that works with my body, and ignore sort of a lot of the different stuff that's out there at the moment on how you should eating, and specifically just catering to my body. Yeah, I feel a lot better for it, and just to know exactly what supplements I should be taking and that they're going to actually make a difference for my body. So to sum it all up, guys, I would highly recommend this process. It is a bit on the expensive side, but if you think about it, your genes don't change over time. You know, you're gonna have your genetics for your entire life. And so you're only gonna have to do it once. And then you think about, just even for me, like some of the supplements that I was taking weren't really doing anything. So just to take that guesswork out alone, you know, that's gonna pay itself off in well and truly under a year. But just lifelong changes that I'm gonna be able to make to sort of better manage my body, and yeah, help me get the most longevity out of it. I think it's a fully worthwhile process, and I'll definitely be getting my wife and my little one to go through this process afterwards as well, so we can sort of look at what changes do we need to make. So if you want to contact Lindsay, she's on all the socials as Seed and Sprout Nutrition, but I'll put her details in the description below. So yeah, if you want to go through this process and check it out, feel free to do so. I would highly recommend it. But yeah, look, till next time, guys. Peace.